So these notes should look very similar to what we did a couple days ago, because basically on that one I made sure all we had on there was sine, cosine, and tangent, and then I adjusted this, I edited it a little bit so that we would just have secant, cosecant, and cotangent on this one. So the instructions on these two, well, yeah, I think these instructions are good. These make no sense because I chopped that part out, but y'all don't read the directions anyway, so I think we're fine. All right, so we're going to look, so basically what we're doing with all these is just coming up with the values. So not only are we going to think about the reference angles, but we also want to think about the little all students take calculus. And I would leave it at that. I would leave it with sine, cosine, and tangent and if you really got those down, you getting the reciprocals should be fairly simple. It's just one more little step. So just like we did on the last one that looks similar to this, we're going to jot some things down that you may not always jot down when you do it, but it should be in your brain, or maybe it does help you to write them down so you don't lose what all you're thinking of, whatever works for you. All right, so we've got the cosecant of 2 pi thirds. All right, so the first thing I want to know is, what is the reciprocal of cosecant? Sine. Okay, so I'm going to write down sine, or again, like today, go ahead and write it down so you know what all the processes are, but in the end, if you're really just thinking it, that's fine. Then I got to think, all right, so this is the sine. 2 pi thirds is in which quadrant? Second, so it's sine, I'm in the second quadrant, and then in the second quadrant, is sine positive or negative? Positive, okay? All right, so now I just think about pi thirds. So I should know pretty confidently what is the sine of pi thirds. Just the sine, square root of 3 over 2, right? You could write that down if you want to, but I'm not going to, because I don't want you to write it down and then, get distracted for a second, then box it and think it's your answer, because it's not my answer, right? It's going to get me there. But I got square root of 3 over 2, and it's supposed to be positive, so then the reciprocal of that is 2 square root of 3 over 3, and then that's my actual answer. Okay. Then I move on to the secant of 5 pi fourths. What is the reciprocal of secant? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, right? Because you have to have one co in every pair. So the reciprocal is cosine. The 5 pi fourths puts me in the which quadrant? Third. Okay, and then in the third quadrant, cosine is negative. So especially since I'm going to have to think about a value and then think about its reciprocal, although that's not necessarily a difficult process, since I already know my answer is negative, I think I'm going to go ahead and put my negative sign so I don't forget to write it, because I'm all caught up in reciprocals. All right, so then the cosine of pi fourths is the square root of 2 over 2. When I take the reciprocal of that, I get what? What's the reciprocal of the square root of 2 over 2? Square root of 2? And then I already have my negative sign there because it's supposed to be negative. That is my answer. Okay. Everybody good? All right. Cotangent of 11 pi sixths. What is the reciprocal of cotangent? Tangent. And then 11 pi sixths is in which quadrant? Fourth. And in the fourth quadrant, tangent is negative, right? So I'll go ahead and put my negative sign here. Tangent of pi sixths, okay, I got the 6, so there's 2 3. So the tangent is the square root of 3 over 3, which means the cotangent is just square root of 3. And it has a negative on it because I'm in the fourth quadrant. Everybody good? Okay. So cosecant of negative 2 pi thirds. Cosecant is the reciprocal of what? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, okay. Negative 2 pi thirds puts me in which quadrant? Third. So if a negative 2 pi thirds, this is pi thirds, 2 pi thirds is over here. I'm in the third quadrant. So I'm in the third quadrant, and in the third quadrant, sine is negative. So I'm of a negative. All right, sine of pi thirds is square root of 3 over 2. So I take the reciprocal of that and get what? Negative 2 square root of 3 over 3. Very good. All right, any questions at this point? Alrighty, so let's look at the quadrantals. I tried to give you more room than you had the other day. That's why sometimes maybe in the middle of my video, my sentence doesn't make sense because I'll pause, and then when I start back up, I have no clue what I said right after I paused, or right before I paused. All right, so we're going to look at the quadrantal angles. Let's go ahead and get our ordered pairs in here. So if I'm at 0 or at 2 pi, then 1, 0. If I am at 90 or pi halves, then I'm at 0, 1. If I'm at pi, I'm at negative 1, 0. And if I'm at 3 pi halves, I'm at 0, negative 1. So I'm pretty confident that y'all can fill those ordered pairs in and you know what they are. Because even when you give me weird answers at the door about these, I'll ask you, okay, what's the ordered pair? And you can tell me the ordered pair, but then weird things are coming out of your mouth that revolve around them. So we're going to talk about cosecant of 0, secant of 0, and cotangent of 0. Okay. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Sine of 0 is 0. The reciprocal of 0 is undefined. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. The cosine of 0 is 1, and the reciprocal of 1 is 1. It's like one of the easiest questions ever, and I think that's why sometimes I get blank looks when I ask, because you're like, it can't be that easy, but it is. Cotangent of 0 is reciprocal of tangent. So what is the tangent of 0? 0, so the cotangent is undefined, yes. So then we're going to do those same three values for pi halves. So cosecant of pi halves, secant of pi halves, and cotangent of pi halves. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. The sine of pi halves is 1, so the cosecant is 1. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine of pi halves is 0, so the reciprocal is undefined. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. The tangent of pi halves is undefined. Technically, the reciprocal of undefined isn't 0, but cotangent of pi halves is 0. So then we'll do the cosecant of pi, the secant of pi, and the cotangent of pi. The sine of pi is 0, so the cosecant is undefined. The cosine of pi is negative 1. The reciprocal of that is negative 1. Tangent of pi is 0, so the reciprocal is undefined. Then we're going to have cosecant of 3 pi halves, secant of 3 pi halves, cotangent of 3 pi halves. So y'all go ahead and fill those three values in. Any questions at all? Check yourself with me, see if we agree. Remember, the quadrantals really are usually they are the easiest ones, but the ones most of y'all struggle with. So make sure you can wrap your mind around them so you don't miss ones that are easier really to think about than some of the weird square root ones. Okay. Any questions at all? All right, so we're going to do 5, 6, and 7 together, and then you're going to do the rest. So we ignore the directions on here just like you ignore the directions on everything. And whether or not you write down, all students take calculus, or it's just in your mind, whatever works for you. It's not a bad idea, I don't think, to write it down, because I think sometimes, even if the letters weren't there, just to have an X and Y axis that you can actually look at and think around the circle, because then when I'm asking y'all questions at the door, I can see the little wheels turning in your brain. And I can see you thinking, okay, and you'll even say things like, okay, it's over here, or it's up here, or I see your eyes move, and I can tell your eyes are moving around the circle. So you're picturing in your head, which is phenomenal. That's what you should be doing. But then sometimes it even helps to think, okay, so that means I'm right here, or I'm right here, or, you know, whatever, just to actually point at it. Sometimes that can help you too. But it depends on how your brain works. So, all right, cosecant. Cosecant is a reciprocal of sine. 3π4 is in the second quadrant. In the second quadrant, sine is positive. So then I know that the sine of π4 is the square root of 2 over 2, which means the cosecant is what? Square root of 2. Yep. All right, so then secant of pi. All right, well, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. This is not in a quadrant, it's a quadrantal. So here's where it might be helpful to think, okay, so pi is over here, which means that cosine is -1, and then the reciprocal of -1 is -1. Cotangent, I've got, reciprocal of cotangent is tangent. -5π3. What quadrant is that in? It's negative, though. So if it's negative, so 5π3 is in the fourth quadrant. -5π3 gets me all the way to the first. And in the first quadrant, everything's positive. So the tangent of π3 has 1/3, so it's the square root of 3. But when I take the reciprocal to get the cotangent, I get square root of 3 over 3. Any questions at all? All right, so one thing I want you to fix before I turn you loose is on number 16. I really could just leave it cosine, it doesn't matter, but I meant to change them all and I didn't. So we're going to change 16 to cosecant, just so that they're all reciprocals. Then I'm going to give you about 5 minutes or so to work the last 9 of these. And then I'll do mine as well at some point, but don't just copy mine down. They're there for you to check yourself. If you're watching the video, pause it right now and do those 9. And then unpause it to check yourself because I'm not going to let the video run. Okay, so I hope I gave you enough time. If not, I'll leave this up here. I still don't want you just copying mine down. But once you are done, check yourself with me. And let me know if you have any questions. And remember that you're going to have a review tomorrow and a test on Friday. Okay? Don't forget that the study sets are in Quizlet, so they are good for you to help you study. Another way to help with the drill and practice is just doing more of the delta math. Once you make 100 in delta math, you can go back and do more and more. And if there's specific parts where you feel like, you know, it's kind of just asking you questions like this, that way you can check your, you know, it'll check you that way too. The other thing about delta math is I was looking at some of their explanations on how to find some of this stuff, and wow, it's like, I don't even know why in the world you would do that. On some of these it says, well, you convert it to degrees and then you do this, and like, no, just no. That I don't know why you would ever want to do it that way. So I love delta math, but sometimes their explanations are from left field and I don't even know what's going on there. But anyway, practice, practice, practice.